Welcome to all of our ISM members, chapter partners, and guests to today's program hosted by the ISM New Jersey chapter and sponsored by Fairmarkit. The topic for our discussion is how Las Vegas Valley Water District found significant savings in their tailspin with Fairmarkit. During the program, please be sure to ask your questions or post your comments in the chat or the Q&A box. Everyone will receive a copy of the recording and your continuing educational credit later today. Now on to our program. Our host for today is Madison Mobley, Head of Employee Performance at Fairmarkit. So now I'm turning the program over to you, Madison.
Hi, everyone. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay, but thank you so much for joining today's webinar. This is going to be so little about me. I think the intro Kathy provided is fine enough for today, and so much about Jim and Erin, our panelists today. So given that an hour flies by quite quickly in 2022, I'm just going to go ahead and introduce them both as they're already on camera, and then we'll dig into today's conversation if that's all right with everyone. So Jim, I'm going to start with you. Jim Haining, you all know too well, I'm sure, is the purchasing manager for the Las Vegas Valley Water District. He has over 30 years experience in supply management in both the public and private sector. Former employers include Clark County, Nevada and Sprint, and Sierra Pacific Power Company. Jim has been involved in local government purchasing in Nevada for the past 15 years and served as co-chair of the Nevada Public Purchasing Study Commission, a coalition of the public sector purchasing departments in the state of Nevada. And then we have Erin McFarlane, who for the last 20 years has gained a wealth of sourcing and supply chain management experience and has led digital transformation of source to pay process at multiple Fortune 500 companies. Currently, she's revolutionizing enterprise procurement and sourcing with Boston-based SaaS company Fairmarkit using next generation technologies like artificial intelligence, machine learning, robotic process automation, natural language processing, and blockchain. So hi, Jim. Hi, Erin.
Hi.
Hello, hello.
Happy Thursday. Welcome.
Welcome to my pool.
You said what?
Cool.
Welcome to my pool.
Thank you. We appreciate it. So before we dig into some healthy back and forth, let me establish some context for the audience, if I may. And speaking of May, it was late May, early June. Gartner put out a market guide for e-sourcing applications. Few things stood out to me relevant to today's conversation. Unsurprisingly, and I doubt this will surprise anyone, economic uncertainty, inflation, supply chain shortages remain some of the external pressures procurement leaders need to continue keeping a pulse on. And that's going to continue to be the case as we tap dance into 2023. From a key takeaway perspective, autonomous sourcing capabilities are starting to mature, improving event automation, allowing procurement to take on additional spend coverage, and helping them make decisions about different types of spend. And then from a recommendation perspective, procurement leaders, as I read, should choose and seek out a best fit supplier by matching suppliers' supported RFX capabilities, let's say, and their organization's category strategy. So the way I read that is prioritize perhaps advanced bid analysis for complex spend, or alternatively, RFQ or quick quote capabilities for low complex categories, or let's call it tail spend. All right, so Erin, I'm coming to you first, if that's okay. Mm-hmm. Before we unpack how the Fairmarkit Las Vegas Valley Water District partnership came to be, how would you describe your scope of responsibility at Fairmarkit? Let's start there.
Sure. So I've been with Fairmarkit almost since the beginning, and I've held a lot of different roles here at the company. Right now, I'm the Vice President of Product Innovation, which means I'm responsible for helping to push the envelope of what is possible from a technology perspective in procurement, and where we can go with some of these new technologies like natural language processing, like machine learning, and where that can take us and bring us forward. I'm also responsible for our partnerships, and our relationships with the companies in the marketplace like Coupa, like SAP Ariba, like Oracle, some of the other technologies that we're working, because we're seeing more and more companies like Las Vegas and other organizations going to a microcosm where they have a central system and then they're using lots of purpose-built applications and micro solutions like Fairmarkit to achieve an overall vision. So I'm responsible for sort of driving that innovation and connecting the different partners together. And it's really exciting. It's fun stuff.
So given that lens kind of through which you see the world, what's your perspective on how autonomous sourcing should be defined, right, for the sake of this conversation, and its relationship to spend management, whether we're talking complex or non-complex spend?
So in addition to all the things that you talked about of inflationary pressures and challenges in the supply chain, I think one of the other challenges that we're really seeing is pressures on less people to do more stuff. And real challenges with getting the appropriate levels of staffing and having enough people to get everything done in procurement. And once we have those people, making sure that they have meaningful and interesting work to do. So one of the phrases that I use all the time is, rather than trying to automate everything, we want to automate the boring stuff. So we want to automate as much of that low-hanging fruit as we can and work on automation in an incremental way. Sometimes I think when folks think about autonomous sourcing, they think about the most complex event in their mind and go, oh God, I could never automate that. You're right. You couldn't, and you don't want to, but there's a bunch of work being done inside of your organization, or work that may not be being done at all, that is a great target for these tiny automation journeys of taking the boring stuff off people's plates so that they can focus on the thought work. So that's really where I see when I think about autonomous sourcing, is it's not like a big on and off switch. It's, what are some of those low level tasks that we can automate so that people move to more of a control and command, where they're defining the strategy, they're defining the policy, and they're letting the computer do that boring work. And I know that's something that Jim has done a really great job of over at Las Vegas. So that's why I'm excited to talk about this.
Yeah. So Jim, if you don't mind, I'm coming to you because Erin, great segue. Before we get into the nitty gritty, I would love for you to just, as I asked Erin, how would you describe your scope of responsibilities so you can set the scene for us?
So at the Las Vegas Valley Water District, we provide all the water to about 2.4 million residents in Southern Nevada. Everything from water treatment to the distribution to the taps and everything in between. We also have some ranches in Northern Nevada that we support, and we have a cultural attraction on our property where the very first settlement in the springs of Las Vegas were back in the 1800s when Las Vegas was settled. Anyway, responsible for all the procurement and contracting at the Las Vegas Valley Water District, probably around $300 to $400 million in spend annually. And that is increasing because we have a ton of projects that are coming up here in the future.
Okay, so we'll get to the future projects, but I would love for you to describe the world that you were living in before you even knew a Fairmarkit existed. What were some of the challenges you were faced with, perhaps? What were some of the things that were keeping you up at night? Not trying to lead the witness here, but would love for you to paint us a picture of what your day-to-day looked like and the things that were top of mind.
Well, before Fairmarkit and before my procurement transformation, we were using an old system that was cobbled together internally with a bunch of custom programs to try to get an old system to work like a procurement system. And so I had 16 people working for me when I came on. We were trying to use this old system. It took 8 clicks just to create the from after the PO was ready, 8 clicks and 3 screens to be able to get it ready to email the PO to a supplier. So the first thing we did when I first came on board 5.5 years ago from management was, Jim, you got to put in a real procurement system. So we started that process. I implemented Coupa 18 months ago, and now I have a very modern, easy to use, streamlined procurement system that has really made us much more efficient so that we can focus on the things that matter. But before Fairmarkit, my low dollar tail spend, all my stuff that did not have to be formally bid, under our state statute, we're a quasi-governmental entity, so we have to act under the local purchasing government laws. Anything under 50 grand, 1 quote, cut a PO. So there was no competition up to 50 grand. Anything over 50 grand, we were having to get 2 or 3 quotes up to 100, then over 100 formal bid. And there's some of my local procurement people online here, and they understand what we're doing. So everything was one quote, cut a PO, one quote, cut a PO, we're done.
Wow. Okay. Okay. And real quick, Erin, does that dark and stormy night kind of resonate with you as you think through the infinite number of customers that you've worked with over your career?
Yeah, absolutely. And it was one of the things that shocked me even 20 years ago when I first got into procurement was, I know when I go to buy anything over like, I don't know, $100, I'm doing some competitive shopping. I'm going to check things out. Like when I went to rebuild my kitchen, I got quotes from 4 people. And it shocked me when I started talking with some of the large organizations that where those competitive thresholds were. And they weren't set at 100,000 or 250,000 or wherever because someone said, oh, there's no value in having competitive quotes lower than that. It was, we only have 16 people. We only have 20 people. Right. At a certain point, it's a diminishing return for us. And we just can't do it. We have to focus on our strategic spend. And so what ends up happening is wherever that threshold is set, whether it's at some companies at $1 million, whether it's at 100,000, whether it's at 50, this spend just kind of gets issued to whoever the first quoter is. And the end result of that, after years and years and years of using the same person for those $40,000, $50,000, $75,000 purchases, that lack of competition shows in and turns itself out in higher prices, lower services, and a really vulnerable supply chain. And I think we've seen in the last couple of years what happens when you're single threaded and you've been buying this one really important small dollar item thing from the same person for forever. And then all of a sudden that person for forever goes out of business, has to close their plant due to COVID, has some sort of challenges. So not only has ignoring everything below that threshold been a cost prohibitive and a service prohibitive approach, it also is really risky. So I think a lot of people have learned that they have to find some way to start paying attention to those lower dollar transactions. But by the same token, you can't hire people right now. So you got to figure out something else to do. And I know, Jim, that was something you ran into recently where you lost some people. You had people retire, right?
I've had 8 people retire in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
Which makes
I've hired 3 new people in the last 4 months.
Mm-hmm.
And 1 more coming on soon.
Mm-hmm.
So
see, I think that speaks to the power and the very unique role that technology can play in kind of bridging us from doing a whole lot more with a whole lot less to driving massive efficiencies for our organizations. And so, Jim, talk to me about, as we continue to tell this story, what about Fairmarkit got your attention when thinking about your next phase of digital transformation past the point of bringing on Coupa and kind of centralizing all of your spend data to start?
So I'll start from the very beginning. So my salesperson contacted me through LinkedIn. Well, I don't deal with salespeople on LinkedIn. So I was one of those jerks that said, hey, LinkedIn is my personal account. If you want to talk to me about business, figure out how to find me. And he found me. I mean, within a few days, I got an email from him and I said, okay, this guy's smart. Let me at least listen. So I took the call, I scheduled a demo, and I go, dang, it's not that easy. And we did, so I got my team together, we saw another demo. It was that easy. And then I go, well, I need to look into this more. So I did some reference calls and talked to a couple customers. And they all told me how easy it was. Now, even after all that, I didn't realize how easy it really was till we got it in and live.
Okay.
But one other thing I want to go back to what you were talking about. One thing that we have found, in this crazy environment where we are getting 1 quote, cut a PO, our suppliers were so conditioned that they knew they had no competition, so they could charge us anything and we would pay it. another thing that really became important to us in this transformation was, and we're all dealing with this crazy supply market out there and lead times. Sometimes price isn't even the most important thing. For certain items that we're buying, the most important thing is when can we get it? And that is another thing that has really helped us with Fairmarkit, because we're getting accurate lead times, accurate pricing with our quotes from our suppliers, so that we can make a decision. Yeah, we might pay a few dollars more if we can get it a week or 2 or 3 earlier. And we have lead times that are now going out for some of our critical parts to 300 days. Well, we can't live that long. So to wait to get that stuff in, our people are dying. So this has been awesome for us to be able to have this information to make a buy decision.
Okay. And it's interesting. So you were leading kind of to my next question, which was, because I heard you loud and clear, ease of use, right? I also heard you speak to cycle times, getting to a place where maybe in some instances that's far more important than price. What else was part of your decision criteria? You mentioned the reference calls, but were there other things that you'd like to share that speak to how you made the decision to enter a partnership?
Well, they talked about implementation and the lack of our need to have IT resources involved in the implementation. I didn't believe it.
Nobody ever does.
We didn't. But I do have a system. Our procurement system's easy to integrate with. And Fairmarkit had a lot of people who are familiar with Coupa. And so they told me, oh, integration time is only going to be 5 weeks. And I go, oh, really? No. You can't integrate anything in 5 weeks or implement in 5 weeks. Well, we didn't meet 5 weeks. It took 6 weeks because I asked for a bunch of additional little enhancements in our integration as we started to see what it could do. But, and also, ROI was extremely important to me. In fact, I wrote into the contract that if we did not have enough savings to meet our ROI in the first year, that we would get a reduction, or we'd get a rebate back for the amount of savings that we didn't receive in our first year.
So when did you get your ROI?
Making my
One of my favorite stories about you. How long did it take?
So you want to know how long it took me to get my ROI?
I do.
6 weeks. We got enough savings in our first 6 weeks to pay for this system and the implementation for the first year. And this isn't fluff anticipated savings. This is real hard dollar savings based upon the benchmark price, which is our last price paid, or the price that was quoted by the supplier that was attached to the requisition that was sent in from the end user. I was shocked, absolutely blown away.
Erin, when you hear this, is that from your perspective kind of in line with what one could expect from an implementation?
It is. And especially if you're using one of the next gen procurement systems like Coupa, like Ariba, some of these cloud-based systems are fantastically easy to integrate with, and nobody ever believes me, but I swear it really is that easy, because cloud to cloud's pretty straightforward. And in terms of the ROI, I get really excited about this because not everything you buy does what it says on the package. But we know, and we have so much evidence from customers like Jim, that when you apply competition, saving comes out the other end. And it simply does, even sometimes without you having to change your supplier, simply knowing and being able to challenge that supplier who hasn't been challenged in a decade, and tap on their shoulder and say, hey, you're charging me $50,000 for this other thing, but I've got 3 other competitors who say they'll do it at 30. What's going on here? Oh, sorry about that. I'll drop that price right now. No problem. So we see it all the time. And it's again, so you set these thresholds. You come into your organization and you say, we source everything over 50,000, 100,000, 250,000. Your long-term suppliers know exactly what that number is. And they're going to be $3 underneath it or $10 underneath it. They know what that number is. And if you don't have that check on the other side, the prices will go up. So where we see the most dramatic impact are in these areas where that particular spend has largely gone unchallenged for a significant amount of time. And it's these $40,000, $50,000 purchases are really where that's at. Because usually you've got catalogs and things like that to deal with your little purchases at the bottom, and those are pretty well managed. And you've got strategic people doing the big projects, and they're doing a fantastic job. And it's the stuff in the middle where that's where the margins are. And that's where applying just a little bit of pressure can have remarkable impacts on your bottom line, on your turnaround time, and on your overall risk. Jim, you are in water in particular fascinates me because it's one of these things you don't think about your tap water until you imagine turning on your tap and nothing comes out. Mm-hmm. And then you think about nothing but that. Right. There is absolutely nothing more important than that. And so many things that we do as procurement people are invisible until they go wrong. And I think we've seen that in the last couple of years, that we've gotten a lot of maybe unwanted attention because things have gone wrong. And I think thankfully what that's made people realize is that it's not just the strategic decisions that are important. It's some of these smaller purchases. When you look at them in aggregate and sometimes by themselves, they're make or break. And you don't pay attention to those $40,000 purchases until they go off the rails. And then all of a sudden you turn on the tap and no water came out. So I think it's a great opportunity to use technology to fill that space, because what you can't do is go out and hire 200 people right now. It's just not going to work.
So Erin, in my response to that, it's not even the $40,000 purchases. Mm-hmm. It's the $500 purchases. So yeah, what I've turned on is everything between $200 and $100,000. Yep. That is not on contract has to go out and be quoted in Fairmarkit. Mm-hmm. And we found right out of the gate, our incumbent suppliers started underbidding themselves. Because once they found out that we were popping this stuff out for quotes, they started coming back with competitive pricing. Mm-hmm. So that's how we got such a huge and quick ROI those first 6-8 weeks. But it has continued. You'd think that after the first couple 3 months that our savings would slow down. It really hasn't. Everything that we're running so far, as of this morning, we'd run about $9.2 million worth of spend through Fairmarkit, and we're receiving an average savings of 4%. And as of this morning, we had saved $383,000. Mm-hmm. And that's money that didn't come back to my cost center, but the cost centers of my customers, they didn't have to pay that money. Now, at first, I had a little bit of concern from end users. Oh, we don't want you to go quote this stuff. We just want you to use that supplier that we'd gotten the quote from. And now they're saying, hey, send this out to Fairmarkit. We want to get competitive quotes because the last purchase, you just saved us $5,000 and now I have $5,000 I can spend on something else in my budget. So it's, and also another thing, my CFO looks forward to the report that I have automatically emailed to him every Monday morning to see what our results are using Fairmarkit. Oh, and if he doesn't get it, he calls me and says, hey, Jim, I didn't get this.
And then he calls me, Erin, where's my report?
Speaking of reports, though, I would love for you both to talk a bit more about things like, goals set. Once Fairmarkit's up and running, it's cranking. Got it. but what kind of goals, KPIs, main drivers once it's up and running? And maybe those are in fact the metrics showing up on kind of the CFO's report. But what metrics are you all driving towards on a quarterly, monthly, et cetera basis?
Basically, I'm just looking at savings and
Okay.
looking at speed, my buyer speed. You know, I went to a meeting recently with some of the leaders of Fairmarkit, and they asked me, Jim, you have been one of our more successful clients. How were you able to make it so successful? I go, well, I put into my buyers, well, purchasing analysts is their official title. I put it into their performance accountabilities that they had to have their draft RFQs. So anything that came into Fairmarkit at the end of the day had to be sent out for quote. And we only do 48-hour turnaround quotes. So it's quick quotes, you know, 2 days out. And anything that is closed that day has to be awarded that day by the end of the day, by the time you go home, unless you're trying to get questions from the end user answered on, you know, can we use this substitute or alternate that had been quoted? So by doing that and putting that into the performance accountabilities of my purchasing analysts, they are driving the use of Fairmarkit and making this thing extremely successful. And I put all the kudos back on them for using the system the way it should be used. Now, the cool thing about this system is so easy to use that they can do it. And no, everyone stopped whining. At first I had a little bit of whining, but now there's no more whine.
That's good.
But yeah, if you wanted me to show the users how simple it can be, I can share my screen and just show a couple things.
I know you've been super excited to do that. So I'm gonna like hold my breath on a live demo because they always scare me. And I'm gonna say, go for it. Let's see it.
Yeah, she's scared that
I
this
am.
won't work. So hopefully you
I'm
can
not
see
scared.
my screen here. Is this, you see the Fairmarkit screen?
I can see it.
Awesome.
Oh, you've only got 4 drafts. That's
I've
awesome.
only got 4 drafts right now. I told them to
Love it.
hold a couple off and not process them so that I have something that I could quick show.
So these are
So
real. These are live. This is stuff you're
this
buying
is
today.
real live in the real system, and I'm going to
Okay.
put this one out for quotes. So this is Renice's. You'll see here, here's the date. This is the preferred delivery date, who my analyst is. Here's the close date. Well, we only work 4-day work weeks, so I don't need this thing closing on Saturday. We'll push this out to Monday. And I'm going to close this thing at 1 o'clock. So that's all I have to do there. Everything else pulled over from the requisition. You'll see we have the manufacturer names, part numbers, descriptions, unit of measures, quantities, and here's the benchmark pricing. Now, the suppliers don't see this. And this is the pricing, last price paid for these items out of our system. So it'll come down here, it'll show me these customer categories, but we have made this thing real simple. We have built out what we call supplier groups. So all my analysts have to do is go in and look at this thing and, hey, I'm going to send this out to all my valve suppliers. I'm going to send this out to my Waterworks Big 3. I'm going to send this out to my MRO suppliers. And I'm going to send this out to my backflow people because it has backflow devices and whatnot on it. So quickly doing that, it added all these suppliers automatically. Now, one other thing I do, we'll click this, and now this will pop it out live into the Fairmarkit supplier portal. I come up here and I click refresh suppliers. And let's see here. It's thinking. Oh, there we go. So now it is recommended 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 suppliers. Well, I know we already have American Backflow in there. I know we already have Core and Main in there. I can leave Source 1 in there. we'll leave mechanical products, Winston water cooler, and you'll see if it has this green Coupa on it, they're already in our purchasing system. So we wouldn't have to onboard them, easy to award. So that's
I'm gonna
all I have to
ask you just
do.
because I can show it on here, and I love how you're doing it. What are those black bubbles?
Black bubbles. What, over here?
No, the underneath, like Southwest Valve and Equip, it says SBE.
Oh, there you go. So Fairmarkit has already classified all of our suppliers based upon diversity information that they have in their system. So this Southwest Valve is a small business enterprise. Griswold is small business and small disadvantaged business. So those who, JNS Valves is a woman-owned business. Let's see, any other different ones? Looks like most of our small business. So these are already categorized, and we also have them categorized in our purchasing system so that we can easily run reports on our diversity spend when we need to. So that's all we have to do, pretty easy. Now it's going out to a boatload of people, but I don't care. If they want to quote, fine. If they don't have to. So all I have to do is click save and send. There we go. It is now sent live out to all of our suppliers, and it moved it from drafts to open. And you'll see we have 7 that are out there in open status, meaning we're waiting for quotes. You can see over here how many quotes we've received on them already. We're just sitting waiting for that to close, and this will show the close date. So it looks like most of these are closing on Monday. These 2 down here are closing later this afternoon. So let me go to closed and quick show you how simple it is to award. So here's one. I checked some of these, and some of them are a little more complex because we didn't get quotes on all of the items. Let me just open this one just to show you, for example. So what you get is this matrix here, and you can go start awarding by just selecting. You can cherry pick, you can award it all to one supplier, but you'll see we have some lines here that we did not get a quote on. So Renice is going to have to go do a little bit of work on this one. So I'm not going to mess in this one, but it is just as easy as this. I can click here, click here, click here, and that's how I can award this. And all I have to do is go up there and click on that button, and it makes the award in Fairmarkit. But I'm going to go do an easier one. So this was for some air filters that Daniel had out. We popped it out. You'll see we had 2 quotes. This one here, it'll show you who the low bidder was. This is simple. You can see it's only a $1,600 quote, but heck, if we would have just gone to these guys for quotes, we would have paid another, what, $800 for the exact same filters. So all I have to do to award this is click that, click award 10 items, that. Now what it did is it automatically sent this back into my purchasing system, and it does it instantaneously within like 1 or 2 seconds. The integration has now updated my purchasing system with the correct supplier, with their new price. It has attached their quote number and any files that they attached, and it attaches it right into the requisition. Now my buyer just has to go out into Coupa, review that rec, decide that everything looks good, hit the button, and Coupa will cut the PO and email the supplier. So it's just a matter of a few clicks and everything's done. And we have it. So also, let's say, let me go back to a draft one. Let me go into this one here. Let's say that, and this one didn't do a very good job. So the integration brings the requisition over from Coupa. It will attach a quote. So here's the quote we received. So we can look at this quote. It just pulled up on my other screen. Let me drag it over. And it's not letting me drag. Oh, there we go. So there's the quote. Well, here's the description, here's the part number. They didn't even put that in. So what Daniel can now do is put in the manufacturer name, the part number, fix the description. Now I'm live, I'm not going to save this. And what this will do, once he sends it out to the suppliers to get quotes, when it comes back, it will have the updated manufacturer part number and description on it, and it will overwrite my requisition in Coupa. So it has made it so my buyers don't have to be entering information in two different systems. They just have to go check. So it is, the integration has just been absolutely amazing how simple and quick it all works. So there's my demo. And for those of you who don't believe me, you want to come over and see it, I'll show you. It's awesome.
I am so blown away. You did a better job than like a good bunch. Sorry, I won't
am
say
floored.
I've got to send my salespeople to you for training. Holy moly, you're fantastic. Thank you.
That was great. Erin, anything to add just based on what? I was watching your expressions as Jim walked through.
I mean, it's fantastic. What I would say is that other VWs using Coupa, our customers use all sorts of P2Ps and ERPs, and we integrate with lots and lots of them. And not just the next generation ones. We have a significant amount of customers using like an older version of SAP ECC, for example, and SRM. And many of our customers have multiple ERPs, and they're bringing them all into that single view. So if you're in sort of a merger and acquisition situation where you've acquired a company, they're still using another P2P and you haven't moved them over yet, you can still get visibility into those purchases and have more control over them by connecting multiple P2Ps to Fairmarkit, which I think is kind of cool. But what I was thinking, usually we don't get a ton of questions, but we have had the questions like blowing up.
You're reading my mind, because I was just going to dig in. And you just addressed the ERP P2P question, because there was one that came in around, can we easily integrate with Oracle or an SAP? So answer yes. Another question that came in, do the suppliers have to sign up to access the RFQs, or are they seamlessly integrated?
So I'll let Jim take the second half of this, but this is controlled by our customers. Some of our customers only want to get quotes from suppliers that they've already vetted and that they're already working with and that are already part of their supplier master. If that's the case, we set that as a setting in Fairmarkit, and it's great. It's fantastic. If they want to receive quotes from people who are outside of their existing supplier base, we're able to provide those quotes. But in order to award to them, you're still going to need to onboard them in your P2P or ERP. So usually what folks will do if they do decide to get quotes from external suppliers is they might not just, you're not going to onboard a new supplier to save $50, but if you consistently see this new supplier just killing it, then you can make that strategic decision to bring them on board. So Fairmarkit doesn't do any supplier onboarding. That's not really part of our world because everybody's supplier onboarding process is different. But what we find is that the majority of organizations we work with already have a huge supplier master. And chances are you're going to be able to get 95% of the quotes that you want from the suppliers you already have. So I guess, Jim, what's the policy that you've set on working with suppliers that are known to you versus brand new suppliers?
We've done kind of a hybrid of what you're talking about. So all of our suppliers that we had email addresses for, and you don't have email addresses for everybody, but all that we had emails for, we had the integration go into Fairmarkit. So every 5 minutes, there's an integration that updates suppliers from our supplier master into Fairmarkit. Now, one thing we have done, when we first went live, we still pop it out to the Fairmarkit marketplace to see if there's any new suppliers. And frankly, we have found a couple new suppliers, MRO suppliers in Midwest cities that we had never done business with, that after, a few weeks, we saw they were consistently doing very well and very competitive on the quotes. So we onboarded them. And one of them is saving us lots of money all the time. And my local MRO suppliers are whining, who in the heck is this? And why are we not getting this business that we always used to have? And it's like, hey, dudes, you got to get competitive. But we have that integration build between Coupa and Fairmarkit. So if they're in Coupa, we got an email address, it pushes us directly into Fairmarkit. And like you said, you kind of do a hybrid of both until you're real comfortable. But yeah, I have talked to other Fairmarkit customers that will only use their suppliers, which is fine. You can do that too. But we have found a few good suppliers that we weren't aware of by using Fairmarkit.
Another question that came in, and I actually think this one came in while you were mid-demo, Jim. So that's the context. But what ensures comparability of the widgets being quoted in Fairmarkit?
Well, we generally have a manufacturer name and part number. So the original quote needs to be on the manufacturer name and part number that we provide. And if they want to give us an alternate, there's another line that they can enter the alternate on with that manufacturer name and part number. And then we do some verification on our back end and also reach out to our end users to make sure that that alternate is actually acceptable before we award. And a lot of times, you know, we get alternates that are not equal. And even when you look at the pricing, you can tell, okay, these aren't equal because this one's $2,500 and these other guys just quoted $1,000. So, okay, we're not talking about an equal here, but we reach out to our end users to make sure before we award. But that's something you can still continue to do. We don't automatically award to low bid. So, you know, one of the next things we're looking at is how to make this a little more autonomous, a little more self-driving, like a Tesla. So right now we're looking at auto bundling. So taking, you know, 2 or 3 recs during the day that have similar type items and bundling them. We're going to start testing that out. Another thing Fairmarkit can do is auto award, but I'm scared to death on that one.
Appreciate
But
the honesty.
we are going to, you know, look into it. We are going to play with it. We are going to test it. We're going to make sure we have our hands on the wheel while it's driving. We're not going to let it just drive 100% by itself. But you know, if we can get to that point and get Fairmarkit to automatically select our supplier categories that we've built based upon the categories on the recs and the items, that'll just save us just a little bit more time. But yeah, this is exciting stuff. I remember when I first started 33 years ago, I was the office supply buyer at the power company. And, you know, all I did was write things on a piece of paper of what we needed and go to the fax machine and fax it out and then wait for the faxes to come back. And, you know, before Fairmarkit, you know, if we wanted to source any of this type of spend, we were sending emails out. And now it's simple and the system administers that whole process seamlessly.
So I think there was a question about the top 3 categories we're most successful in, and I can let Jim answer what categories work for him, but I'll answer broadly at Fairmarkit. We're successful in almost every category that we source, as long as it's something that is fairly tactical and we can get our hands on. Where most of our customers start is MRO, IT, and then usually it'll be sort of in these transactional services, like these facilities type services, like plowing and landscaping and a cabling contract. So some of the more tactical services that go on. So I would say those are probably the top 3 in terms of volume on Fairmarkit as a whole. Would be MRO, you know, well-defined parts, IT hardware and software, again, where it's a pretty well-defined bill of materials. And then surprisingly, some of these these $30,000-$50,000 service requests, especially in the facility space, have been exceptionally successful inside of Fairmarkit. So, from the platform as a whole, those three are really our winners. And that's across all geographies. We're in 71 countries right now. We're being used in 71 countries, and those three categories hold firm across the world in that space. But I know that with what you're buying, Jim, it might be a little bit more heavily on the MRO side, but what categories are you finding the most success in?
Pretty much the same thing you're talking about. Probably our biggest one, it's MRO items, it's valves, fittings, pumps, electrical equipment. But another thing that we started using it for that we didn't think we would. Now, this is something that we have to kind of do manually. So anything between $25,000 and $100,000 for facilities or construction type services, we have to get 3 quotes for. And it used to be, get your scope of work together, send out emails to, your 3 suppliers and wait for responses and all that. We're now starting to push those out through Fairmarkit. And the suppliers are also liking it because it is so simple. So we attach our scope of work, we put our description in there, and the suppliers are, giving us their pricing and attaching any attachments that we need to come back. So now, instead of dealing with that all manually with emails, we're doing it within the Fairmarkit system. And it's awesome.
Another question that came in, because I love to keep my eye on the clock and make sure we have time.
Yeah.
But what kinds of standard reports are available with Fairmarkit? For example, can you run reports that would show how many RFQs were awarded to diverse suppliers in a specific time period versus total number of RFQs that were sent out? So
I'll start with that. I'm a data geek.
Yep.
I'm a data geek. So for me, one of the real downsides that you have when you have people doing their sourcing via email and doing their sourcing, by picking up the phone, is that you can't run aggregate reports. You can't really get a holistic understanding of what's going on and have it stored in a way that is important. So for us at Fairmarkit, it was extremely important that every data point that exists in the system is reportable and accessible. So we have extensive reporting, and beyond that, we have the ability to report on absolutely everything. Like, I can tell you that suppliers respond faster to RFQs sent on Tuesday than RFQs sent out on Monday. I can get that granular and that specific in terms of how many minutes, what's the fastest on average response time, if you send out at what time of the day. But those sorts of things aren't standard. So some of the standard out of the box reporting that we track on a regular basis are things like, what's the total spend coming through? How does that break down by commodity? And some of the buyer reporting that I know Jim is really good at looking at, of how long does it take someone from when they receive a request from an end user until they've got it out to the supplier, then how long is it in the supplier's hands before we can issue the purchase order, and always trying to optimize that and shrink that time as much as possible, while balancing the savings results and getting back the number of quotes that you're looking to get. So a lot of our reporting is really honed in on looking at those things in aggregate so that you can see trends, you can adjust, and for someone like Jim to be able to move to more of a center of excellence, command and control role of, all right, I'm gonna try tweaking this setting and see what comes out on the other side. So Jim, you're one of our biggest consumers of our standard reporting. So which reports do you look at every day or once a week that are really important to you?
I'm looking at buyer performance every week. And like you said, looking to see how quickly they're getting it out from the time the rec hits in Fairmarkit to the time they get it out to the suppliers, and then the speed to award. And we generally keep things out 2 days. And, so our length of time that it's open is a little longer because we have a 3-day weekend every weekend. So that kind of skews.
By the way, I wouldn't be jealous of that. I just have to say that out loud.
Hey, you should be jealous. And so I'm looking at that, and I'm also looking at just the overall performance and savings. I get one report every day that I look at that's just showing my overall the executive overview of what's going on in the system. And then every Monday I get 4 other reports that just showing me what's been going on with my buyers. Look back 6 weeks. I mean, 6 months. So.
Someone I think had asked in the questions about diverse reporting, and yes, absolutely, that's a huge part of what we do. One of the things that I think is pretty cool is so much diversity reporting is backward looking. It's like last quarter we spent XYZ with suppliers, and you kind of you cross your fingers at the end of every quarter and hope you did better. But with Fairmarkit, you can really see what percentage of your RFQs are you inviting a small business, a minority owned business. So how often are you inviting them to sit at the table? How often are they sitting down, meaning they're submitting a quote? And then how often are they actually winning, and what impact is that having on your organization? So if you're looking to drive the spend in a pretty dramatic way, you can try and figure out and target, is it because we're not inviting them? We're not giving these organizations access? Is it because for whatever reason, they're not comfortable quoting? Or is it that they're not competitive? And one of the things that I would say, Madison and I are probably both most excited about, is we've been able to challenge here this idea that buying from diverse suppliers is more expensive. We have found that's not true, and that it is possible to still save money while awarding to diverse suppliers, which is it breaks everybody's brain, because there's sort of this assumption that if you're going to work with small businesses, it's always going to be more expensive. Sometimes it is, but not always.
Mm-hmm. And even a kudos too in the comments. I see, someone commented, I think with increased DEI and ESG initiatives, there could be a need to open spend categories to suppliers that may not exist at organizations today. And identifying supplier diversification is such a great feature. So a kudos. Do vendors get pre-screened is another question that came up.
So I think we touched on this a little bit. Fairmarkit does not pre-screen suppliers, but we get our suppliers from our customers who have pre-screened them. So I don't know, Jim, what does your screening process look like for your suppliers? What's it like to do business with LBBW?
We do not necessarily pre-screen. We just leave pretty much a wide open window. We like to cast a wider net. Now, there are times when we only want quotes from, 2 or 3 people, and that's it. So we'll lock that down. We won't open up to the Fairmarkit marketplace, or we won't send it out to everybody in one of our supplier groups that we've recognized. But for the most part, I'll open up to anybody, and we'll see what their quotes are like. And like I did mention before, we're not always looking at low price. We're looking at lead times, because that's extremely important in this crazy supply market, especially for critical items that we need in our warehouses for our crews to, go out and fix things, or to get meters, or, we've even sourced meters, which is something that we always strategically source. But the problem was the supplier we had a contract with could not manufacture anything because they were missing some little part like plastic, some little plastic part they're having some kind of a issue with. So we popped it out to all meter manufacturers saying, hey, we're looking for a 1-inch such and such meter. Get us quotes, get us lead time. So we could get these things in, because we were getting it at a point before the construction area started to slow down a bit, where we didn't have enough meters to give to the developers in all the developments being built around Las Vegas. So, and we were able to use Fairmarkit to go out and source some and to get them coming in.
That's simple.
And save money.
And save money. So 5-minute warning, everyone on the call. I would love, Erin, Jim, final thoughts and or future plans from your respective spheres in the Procure Tech universe. Erin, let's start with you.
Sure. So one of the big things that we've been seeing lately is a push towards sustainability, that diversity and supplier diversity and working with smaller businesses and diverse suppliers has been, it's pretty well established, and there's a lot to it, but we're seeing a big rise in the need for ESG support. So personally for me, we're going to be doing a lot of work layering on and complementing our customers' ethical sustainability and responsibility programs, and testing that same hypothesis of everyone assumes that if you're going to do something in a more sustainable way, that it's going to be more expensive. And we think that we can challenge that, and you can do both. And it's possible using the free market to accomplish it. So that's one thing that really excites me for the future. Additionally, it's on the automation side. Jim knows because I push him all the time. If people are always coming in and hitting the same 3 buttons, if all they do is click review suppliers, click this button, hit send, click review, click suppliers, let's automate that and then let people focus on the more interesting stuff that happens in their day. So for me, the automation side of things is what's going to enable people to start making those strategic decisions around sustainability, about looking further down their supply chain, really understanding their supply chain risk, optimizing their contracts, instead of just spending all their time going out and getting 3 bids for something. So for me, it's kind of like that split between ESG and automation is where I'm really interested and fascinated in seeing where things go in the future.
I love that. Jim, what about you?
Yeah, I'm so lucky to work for the organization that I work for, because we have gone down the procurement tech path, and I have some excellent technology tools that make us so much more efficient, and have automated so much of the administrative work that we used to have to do, particularly in a public sector entity. I'm looking at some other technologies as well outside of procurement and sourcing. We're looking at some AP automation next to see what we can do about automating, invoices coming in that, but there's a huge future out there on procurement technology. So procurement tech, it's amazing what's out there, and I look forward to the things that are coming in the future. I'm just excited that I have what I have, and I have partnered with some great companies with great tools that actually are making me and my organization look very good and save us money.
And I mean, I want more customers like Jim who make me look this.
And I want more conversations like this, where we're opening up the live environment to a group of folks that I may or may not have met before. I think, Jim, that was such a powerful moment for me specifically. Erin, I know you wouldn't disagree, so thank you, Jim.
Oh, that's awesome. All right, thank you.
I know we got a minute to go. Kathy, do I need to turn it back to you? I definitely want to thank everyone who came out. I very much enjoyed this conversation. My hope is that everyone listening did as well. And you know our names, you know our faces. So if there are questions that you still have that we didn't get a chance to answer, call us. Jim doesn't like LinkedIn too much for business, so maybe you email him, text him. I don't mind LinkedIn too much. Text me, don't call me, but we're all accessible. So that's what I'll leave everyone with. Kathy, if anything else.
Thank you very much. This was such a great program. Thank you, Jim, Madison, Erin. This was fantastic. The demo, that was tops, Jim. Awesome. Thank you so much. I just want to thank all of you, our attendees, for coming. I just want to say a big thank you to Emma, who helped me to put this program together, in addition to our cast here today. So at this point, I'm going to close out the program. I'm going to say thanks very much, and everyone have a great rest of the day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye, guys.